A round of applause for that wonderful production. Is it Coconut Head Generation, right? Let's appreciate the production team one more time. You know, my name is Jason Nyantino. I'll be taking you through the next session of this lovely evening, which is the panel discussion. You know, I was watching this documentary. It took me back in days to my campus life, just about 2 decades ago. I don't know how university is nowadays. I need to visit my university because I really connected, and that's a great story. I just kept asking myself, what could be happening in the Kenyan public university especially, and what are we doing about it? I'm sure I'm going to hear some great experiences and contributions from the Gen Zs that I'm seeing in the room, who I suspect are in campus. We have lined up a lovely panel, and if you allow me, I'm going to call them to the front in no particular order. But as you can see, we're going to articulate generations in Africa. And as you can see from the film, the issues are the same. I connected 100% to that Nigerian experience. I've been to Lagos a couple of times, and I feel like catching my next flight back to Lagos to experience that pidgin English. It was very exciting. But my hero was that lady, the one who was rooting for women empowerment. You can't beat that one. Let's clap for her. You can't beat that one. Anytime you want to do something, she's got to be on your side. Otherwise, if she's on the other side, you're in trouble. Allow me to call our panelists to the front, who are going to help us in this discussion. And in no particular order, allow me to call a gracious lady, a lady who has had a mark in this country. Her name is Neema Mpenze. Is Neema in the house? Neema, please come forward. Where's Neema? Let's clap as she comes forward. Neema is, she's a writer. She writes stories. Neema, karibu sana. In no particular order, I think you can take one of the seats. She writes stories, and she's going to tell us what kind of stories that she writes. The next panelist I'll call is Professor Mwenda Ntarangwi. Professor, karibu sana. I'm going to give a more detailed intro. The panelist is my good friend, Jacob Aketch. He's a political scientist. Jacob is in the house. Where is Jacob? Welcome. Let's clap for Jacob and Professor. Most welcome, most welcome. Karibu sana, Prof. Make yourself comfortable. Jacob, karibu sana. So it's going to be a wonderful panel this evening. If you had any plans past 8 p.m., please cancel those plans, because it's going to be exciting. Let me say a few things. Can I use this? Let me say a few things about Neema. When I saw her bio, I was like, wow, this is it. She's a writer, and she writes for young people. She's very particular about that. She writes for young people, and she writes about young people. And these stories she writes are by a young person. So she's also young, as you can see. Okay? And her stories inspire what we call, or what she calls, behavioral change. So if you read her stories, if you've been wanting to change your behavior without success, now you know what to read. All right? Let's clap for Neema. She has written for the Shujaaz comic. I think the young people in the house, you know Shujaaz. Okay? Shujaaz drama series, Stra, and Shujaaz TV show. And in her free time, she enjoys reading a good book. She's going to tell us what a good book feels like. I'm not too sure about that, but she's going to tell us that. And also crocheting. You heard of crocheting? She's going to tell us what that means. So let's clap for Neema. Thank you very much. Next in line, no, next to me here is Prof. Professor Mwenda Ntarangwi is the Vice Chancellor, United States International University, Africa. We call it USIU. I don't know, I'm not too sure your students. Are your students here, Prof? Anyways, can you clap for the Vice Chancellor? He's on the panel. Yeah. You know, those days when I was a student, rarely will you find yourself in an audience and your Vice Chancellor is a panelist, you know. So I think nowadays things are a bit easier and more exciting. He is a scholar, teacher, researcher, and administrator of international repute. And being a scholar, I've got to say that he's trained in language education, Kenyatta University, and also cultural anthropology from University of Illinois. He has taught in universities in Kenya, in the US, Liberia. He has carried research in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, US, and Zimbabwe. So he's a well-versed gentleman. So we are so lucky to have him this evening. Put your hands together for Professor Mwenda Ntarangwi. Last but not least is my good friend, Jacob Aketch. In the media circles, those of us who have interacted with him, we call him the political analyst. But he's a good analyst, I can tell you. Nowadays in Kenya, everybody's a political analyst, but this one is a special one. And I know for sure, because he has taught political studies in Kenyatta University, and he has worked as a program officer at the Society for International Development East Africa, in charge of research and publications. He's a writer, so that he has published academic articles, book chapters, and newspaper articles on diverse subjects: political violence in Kenya, East African integration, media markets, name it. He studied interdisciplinary social studies, forced migration studies, among others, from Makerere University, University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, and I must say this, the University of Nairobi. Let's clap for Jacob Aketch. All right, so here we are. Very interesting subject. And I want to start with the Gen Z on the panel. Sorry, my sister, I'll call you Gen Z. I hope you are, or if you look like one anyway. So I can pass that. So what do you make of articulating generations when you relate this with social change, protest, and related issues? Neema.
Thanks, Jason. I think for me, articulating generations is, as we've seen in the film and as we've seen in the recent protests, young people feel like their voices are not heard. And also listening to there was a spoken word segment in the film, and the young man was talking about complacency. And I think the young generation, having gone through or having observed the older generation's sense of complacency and how it's affecting the current generation now, that frustration has built up, and I think that's why we are seeing that this rise in young people coming out, mobilizing groups to speak up about what they want. And I think to articulate generations, we need to look at how we relate to each other, the older generations and the young generations, because we cannot stand alone. So, yeah.
All right. Talking about complacency, maybe just one more question. In the film that we just watched, where somebody said that the young people, I think it was in Nigeria, have been, the older generation have looked at them as coconut heads. Who can't say it? So they are looked at as a complacent generation, I think, until the protests happened. Do you think that's true to Kenya, in your assessment?
Okay, in my opinion, to a point. I think, okay, in my opinion, I feel like there had been a sense of complacency among the young people until we felt that keeping quiet is not doing anything. We are still affected by the same problems that everyone is affected by. And just, so yes, there was some sense of complacency, not anymore. I believe not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to delve deeper, probably why that end, but Prof, what do you think is happening in Kenya at the moment? Except in Kenya, has it always been there? And by the way, we want to make this wider. It's not just political. We want to address social issues, cultural, issues that are leading consciousness that we are seeing amongst our young people and others age sets as well. Prof.
Thank you, Jason. Let me start by saying that there is nothing new in this, which has been mobilized, maybe different. Articulating generations, if we are thinking about generations and how mind makes things simple so that it can manage them and use less energy. That's why we have stereotypes. You say, certain people are like this, because it's easier to do that. But the idea of working through social challenges is not new in Kenya. It's something that has been seen, not even just Kenya, other places as well, where energy is directed at something that is affecting many people. And that allows us to say, I think what might be slightly different now is that we are in an era where information is much more available across the board to many more people. In the past years, maybe at the time when you went to university, one of the things that was important is information, and that information was only mobilized by few people. Today, there's more information, and what has happened is that the state is no longer able to control what kind of information flows among its citizens because of the different ways in which information is generated, communication happens. It's no longer controlled. In fact, it is that element of people creating their own identities and sharing them, and that has moved us to a place where we cannot be controlled. So this is a generation of information spreading, and they can use it in different ways. Yeah.
Are you experiencing this in campus? Is it a different university student than we had probably much earlier?
I think our students are coming to campus when they have access to a lot of information as well. The time when I, as a lecturer, as a professor, was the source of knowledge, the only source of knowledge is long gone. So if my claim to power is that I have knowledge that I'm going to share with them, that power is gone. I have to find something else to cling to, because within a few minutes, my students can find the same information that I'm trying to offer them, maybe packaged even in a better way than I can present it. So it challenges us to go to a point where we're saying, okay, what kind of skills then do we need to help them with? It's no longer giving them information, it's the tools to find that information, ask the right questions, critique it, and come up with better ways of seeing the world. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Jacob, what do you make of this?
Thank you, Jason. Now, watching this documentary, struck by how beautiful the architecture of Lagos University was, but thoroughly run down and in a very great state of disrepair. And in my interactions as well with Kenyan students and visiting Kenyan universities, the inequalities between the offices that the administrators occupy and the state of student accommodation. Students living in hellholes today, no proper running water, dirty toilets, broken, no curtain showers. And so I see and recognize their struggle and also acknowledge, as Frantz Fanon did say, that each generation must discover its mission out of relative obscurity, betray it, or fulfill it. That this generation too is looking for its mission, but certainly its struggle is very deep. I think I went to a relatively city. The loans, yes, we all paid loans and were given loans, but we were certain of getting loans. Accommodation was not a challenge, but today there's no guarantee that you'll get loan on time. Social media updates saying, "Nikuinama too." That is, they are bent over their phones somewhere, whiling away the lunch hour as they wait. They're not sure of the next meal. So if you walk into the campuses today, the material differences between the students who don't have and the students who have is so. So when I see them then organizing the way they've been organizing around Kenya, the way they did in the last 2 months, then it can only be that they are the people who are feeling this pinch more than any other cross-section of our society today.
Thank you. Maybe one simple and direct question before we go to the audience, because it's an interactive session. Neema, do you think then that generation is shaping the way protests are forming? Do you think that generation has a sense of, articulating how we voice our...
Yes, I think so. And just how Professor has talked about, we're in the age of information.
Yes.
Information it's so easy, in a few seconds you can get what you're searching for. Yes. So I think that has also shaped. And I think it would be caused by their past trauma, from the past way of governance. Maybe they felt these young people are speaking in this way, they'll get us in trouble. Language that Gen Z share gives us a sense of belonging and a sense of we can relate to each other and with each other.
Thank you. I remember the headline. I think the very first day we saw Gen Zs in town, and that was but then it wasn't a movie. So there's